got my copy of 6 Days in December, My Father's Journey Home by Carlisle G. Leach. Do you have yours? Get it today on Amazon.
Welcome to a new podcast show about stuff. It's the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Here's you host, Stephen Davis.
Welcome to the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. On this week's episode, I have an iconic American jazz trombonist and a person who has worked with so many well-known musicians, including Sun Ra. Welcome, Craig Harris. How are you doing today?
Hey man, I'm doing fine. Good day. How's the weather where you at? How's Brooklyn doing?
Well, being in the center of the universe, it's doing pretty good. The sun is out today. It's a little chilly, but it's going. And the best thing is that I am able to stand up on my own.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And that's always fighting words, but you try to debate me because that's like Brooklyn, the center of the world republic, the Republic of Brooklyn. And they go through that all the time because I live in Harlem. So they be like, what is the center of Black thought? And so, no, I'm not going for that one, but I'm just glad to see you and hey, it's a good day. And this time in my life, it's just, waking up is the gravy. Everything after that is gravy, and being able to move and have sanity. So I'm feeling good these days, really feeling good. Looking forward to this spring because we were disappointed this winter with the virus and the whole COVID situation. People thought we'd be back in full effect, but no, they're gonna go wild coming in the next couple of weeks, just when this weather changes.
I have such familiarity with the area that you live at because my grandmother and grandfather was the first people to move into at the time, it was called the Stephen Foster Projects down on 115th Street. And
Right.
Then I moved, they were there for like 50 years. And then I had another grandmother that lived on 131st Street. And for a little while, I went to PS 133, which is not far from there on 130th Street.
Right.
So I'm familiar with that area. But since I live in Brooklyn, see, the key to it is that where I live at is the center of the universe.
I think that's Martin Luther King. They call that Martin Luther King Tower.
Yes.
You know, a good friend of mine, Bill Perkins, one of our city councilmen, state senator, he grew up in those buildings.
I knew Bill quite well. Him and
Pam, good friends of mine. And the neighborhood I've been here since I was fortunate enough. First of all, for all people don't know, my name is Craig Harris. I'm a trombonist. I play trombone. I'm a musician. I've been a musician all my life since I was a kid. But my aunt always lived in Harlem. I grew up on Long Island, Hempstead. And maybe that's where we have a good friend, Debbie McFadder, who are a common friend. She spent a lot of time on Long Island. So that's our hookup. And I always, once I said I wanted to be a musician, I had to be in the city. So I started to be in the city. And,
okay, but before we get to that far, I want to start off, where did you come in the world at? You just said Hempstead, Long Island. And I'm not going to ask you how long ago.
Every day, man, I'm a senior now and proud of it because these are some days that, as a musician, man, just as an African-American man, to make it where I'm going is a lot of people don't get there. So I'm 68 and I'm knocking on wood. I always could never imagine, Craig, you're gonna be 70 in about a year and a half. That's what I'm looking forward to that and beyond.
Now, tell us initially about your parents.
Okay, so
and do you have any siblings?
Yes, okay. My family's from Aiken, South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina connection.
Right. And as for most people coming up the Eastern Corridor, they're coming up that Eastern Corridor. So my great grandmother, she brought her family to uptown, like in the 33. And then so she came up with my aunt and her daughter. And then they brought my grandfather and my grandmother. They came on the next trip up and they came up and they would do a big thing was Aiken, South Carolina is horse country, second to Kentucky. It's horse country. So my grandfather groomed horses, and the female members of my family, they would go out to Long Island and do days work, but they would stay out there. They leave Monday and they stay out there till Friday. Then they come back home Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then go back out, live in maids and stuff out in Long Island. So that's how we wound up to Long Island. Then as their money got a little better and tighter, they moved out there closer to the job. And my grandfather, he moved out there because the northern shore of Long Island is one of the most affluent areas in this country. That's where Bernie Madoff made off with all those people's money. And so they were grooming horses out there, Hitchcock Lane and Old Westbury, on these big estates. And so that's how we wound up there. And then in the first place they landed, we had a cousin, my grandfather's mother's sister lived in Hempstead. So they went there. And I've been there ever since. I grew up there in the school system, went to school there. Good school system.
Tell me about this, about the school. Was it segregated or was it integrated?
It was integrated. It was integrated, but not in the sense as the numbers grew. I think I've never been a minority in any of my education institutions. African-Americans have always been the majority of wherever I went to school. So by then, Hempstead was like there was a large group of African-Americans coming there in the late 50s and 60s, making a better home for their families. And I went to school, and it's so funny, I had African-American teachers, like at 3rd, 4th grade, 2nd grade. So when people find out we had Mr. White, I never forget, Mr. White was white, his name was White, and he was blacker than black. And so, Miss Townsend, all these young people, all these people from South, they have moved up here. So I've always had those teachers. So Miss Dunlap, I remember all these people all my life. And around back then in school, they had incredible music programs. So around 5th grade, 6th grade, you choose, they say, okay, they got a music program, you choose instrument. And the band teacher, he takes you in the room, put you in all these instruments. And he says, which instrument you want to play? And I said, I saw the trumpet. I said, I want to play the trumpet. He said, So he gave me the trumpet for a day, but he was a teacher and he had to cultivate his band. So I was in 5th grade then, and all the trombone players were in 8th grade. So they were getting ready to go into high school. So there was no trombone players. So he needed trombone players for the next 3 years. So he pimped me and he used his psychology on me. And he said, because I was on that trumpet for 2 days hard, I was getting it. Then he said, you know what, try this woman. Hey, Harris, look, try this instrument here, this trombone. He said, listen here, see, stick your arm. You have a long arm, Harris. Look at your arm, long, and you can go all the way at the 7th position. Wilson, come over here, try that. Wilson could only get 5th position. So he said, try that. He said, Harris, they can't get 7th position. You can put your hand out there. So I said, okay, I'm gonna get the trombone. And I said, and I've been with the trombone ever since. And beautiful music program. Hempstead I grew up in Park Lake, low-income housing, because people always think, whenever you come from Long Island, people think you are a bourgeois or bougie. They think you bougetto and stuff. That's the term we use. But they don't know they got poor people on Long Island. They got a lot of poor people on Long Island. And the poor people, working class people Hempstead is right next to Garden City, which is one of the most affluent neighborhoods in the United States of America. And so that's how
Any of the Bythwoods that was out that way?
Oh, come on, that's the funeral. That's come on.
Let me tell you a story about the Bythwood piece. I know David very well. I know Danny Bythwood, but I was doing my history and my ancestry history, putting it all together. And some of my relatives in South Carolina, I got their death certificates. It said the person that buried them was a Bythwood funeral home in South Carolina.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then David told me, oh, those were my father's cousin. They had the Bythwood funeral home down there. So yeah, okay.
Bythwood was an institution, and you have to understand, Stephen, that like at that time, we had our neighborhood was integrated in the sense of wealthy African Americans and poor African Americans. You go 2 blocks, so I lived 1 block. The doctors lived. Everybody lived together because of segregation in America. But at this time that I saw professional African Americans, I saw working class African, because we were all one community, because we had nowhere else to go. So we had to deal with each other. We had to be with each other.
The doctors, was it Dr. J?
Julius, I'm about 4 years behind Julius. Julius went to Prospect School. I went to Franklin School. But I'm not talking about like Dr. Allen Young, what's his name? Dr. Gant, Raymond Gant. These were people who a lot of these people that went to Howard, a lot of HBCs. and they came up here and they had businesses. And so what I'm saying is that I grew up watching African Americans in charge all my life. It's nothing new to me. I didn't have I had a black doctor and a black dentist until I was 19, 20 years old. And so Long Island was that kind of place. It was a good place to live. You talk about Julius Erving. They had incredible athletic programs. And this is the funniest thing, Stephen. I played football, I wrestled, and I played lacrosse. I was going to be a jock. The trombone just was on the side. But I wanted to be a defensive halfback for the Kansas City Chiefs. So my game wasn't all that, but I was a good lacrosse player. I played lacrosse. Everybody don't know Jim Brown, the great Jim. But before that, he went to Manhasset. And he's from South Carolina, from them islands, those islands. He's from South Carolina too. And his family settled in Roslyn, where my family settled, Westbury, all that Northern Shore. So Jim Brown was an All-American lacrosse player. All-American. So Long Island African Americans play lacrosse. They've been doing it for 60 years. And in fact, we were South Shore champions when I was a senior in high school. And it was funny because people always take that game and they think it's a European American game. But we come out, it's really from the indigenous, really Americans. That's their game. But we come out the bus and it'd be like, the whole team, maybe there's 5 European Americans on the team. And so they'd be like, what is going on here? Where these black cats playing this lacrosse? And we had a long tradition of it. So to fast forward, this high school was pleasant. I got a unilateral at the same time. My freshman year of high school, man, I didn't want to get with the music program because Dr. King had got killed and we were in the middle of the human rights movement. So I was rejecting anything that was European, white or nothing. I wasn't with it. I wasn't reading no Tolstoy. I wasn't reading no books. I just wanted black. I wanted to give me anything black because it had been denied to me in the curriculum. So we started getting this name, I forgot his name, William Russell. He was not the Bill Russell, but William Russell. He came in to teach black studies my sophomore year. So he started bringing in books like Souls of Black Folk.
Oh, I remember reading that in high school.
Right, woo. And I'm still reading it. So he brought in this whole agenda. They started because they said we have to deal with these students. Dr. King, so I left the high school band. I just left because I was a good student, and I joined the band outside with the drummer. One of the tackle on our football team said, "Man, he played guitar." He said, "Man, why don't you come and join our band? We see you in that band playing." I said, "Okay." He said, and so I went and the band was called Little Richard and the Soul Brothers. And what we did was we played cover music, man. We go and learn the record. We listen to the record and we get all Otis Redding, all the old R&B down. And we would work, man. We would really work. Long Island, we would work because they needed bands and it was a real fertile music scene. We would work all the time. In fact, my first engagement was I worked at a strip joint. And I'm 14 years old and they said we play there at the show place in Roosevelt. That's where Julius Erving is from. On Nassau, we work at the show place Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so it was the funniest thing. We come to school and everybody said, "What y'all do last night?" "Oh, well, it's interesting. We watched this and we was watching titties." We were seeing these grown women like this, and we just play our set. We had a chaperone though. He always said, "Okay, it's time for y'all to go home now. Come and play because they close me down. They catch y'all in here playing." But we played that club. And it was I grew up like very fast. I grew up fast and so I guess kept the music going and learned a lot. Then we got about my senior year was 67. I was a senior in high school. We got a new band teacher from Florida, A&M, named William Herring. And a lot of the players that worked with us, we weren't in the high school band, but Billy Herring, he came, he said, "Where are all the guys that solo or play the other kind of that can don't read, but can play some song?" He said, "They're not in the band. They all playing. They playing at the show place, at the Highway Inn." So he would come to our things. He said, "Y'all need to," he said, "Y'all need to come on back in the band now, y'all." And we got pimped again. He said, "Listen, I'm gonna do, y'all, we're gonna play Shaft." And he wrote out the whole score of the Shaft. And so then he started recruiting a lot of us back in the band. And he said, "Harris, you can do something. If you study hard this next year, we can get you in school somewhere." Because I wasn't thinking about it. I was just thinking about playing lacrosse and football. Mm-hmm. And
did you ever play at Deborah's parents' club?
One in Lakeview?
Whichever.
Yeah. We played everywhere. We played in all the clubs. I worked in I worked in that part of my life, like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We worked 2 times on Saturday, 2 times on Sunday, because there was so much work. The Huntington Townhouse, the clubs, Mr. C's Lounge. There's a place called Freeport, Long Island. And right under the train station, they would have the club row. And then we get the high gigs at Lido Beach or Huntington Townhouse. That was like, we would be the dance band. And it was a good thing for me. So yeah, I'm sure I played. What was the name of Fattest Club?
She mentioned it because she was on the show and she mentioned it, but I don't remember. But I just know that they had two clubs, one in Queens and one in out Long Island. They had the one in Queens, she said was, but the one out in Long Island, they did the shows at.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure I play that. When I check with her, I'm gonna check that. But
now, one of the things I said on the show with her was that I didn't know until my mother told me this before she died a couple of years ago. I think I heard some smatterings of it before, but my father and Deborah's father were best friends while they were in high school.
Where was that at?
In Harlem.
Okay, all right.
My father went to Cooper. Yeah. But that was interesting.
On 120th Street, on 120th Street.
Excuse me?
Cooper on 120th Street.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, yeah. My father graduated from there.
Okay. Yeah. They got a big building there, big like a 60-story building there now. It's right on that corner. 5th and
I saw it the other day. Do you know Kevin Thornburg?
I know the name.
He's with the John Coltrane house out there, out in Long Island. He's one of the consultants that he does things with them, but he's a jazz aficionado. Kevin Thornburg.
Oh yes, I see him with the hat all the time.
Yes, that's Kevin. We were talking about you last night because we went out to Long Island last night to do a photo shoot that he was doing for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So and he was giving me the same history that you're giving me about Long Island. He was telling me the same thing about how people got out in Long Island.
Yeah, and we was popping and we had a good thing. And this guy Heron, he got me back into academic studies, coming back, taking lessons and stuff like that. But I still went to the first year. I went to first year of school. I went to University of Farmingdale State College, the 2-year school out there. And I played lacrosse that year. Then I decided I don't want to do that no more. And I transferred over to State University College at Old Westbury, where they had an incredible program. And there was a man there named Ken McIntyre and his wife, Shashi McIntyre. And
Shashi. Shashi and I were great friends before she died.
Oh man, come on. So I told you we close. We close. That's like my third mother. Okay. She took Westbury is one of those schools Westbury was really, and if I go through that, I know you know a lot of people Westbury, but Westbury is one of those schools was really developed as a payback to African Americans. We're going to give you all a school and you're going to have your own curriculums. You can create everything. Like you didn't have to take no entrance exams to get in Westbury. They was like, you want to go to school? Here's some money, go to school. And they had the loose faculty. They hired some of the great minds, but they had, the whole thing was very loose and it was designed to fail in a sense because they said, watch them, they're not going to do nothing. But Ken McIntyre and Shashi ain't play that. They knew the game. They said, listen, we here to get the work done. Don't believe all this. You can't be no freshman and go on no overseas study and be in your freshman year. You got to, they were just like, they would come in and just, you want to go to school and let anybody come to Westbury. But they had incredible faculty out there. And I dedicated my life strongly. I lived in the practice rooms. Shashi, I said, you can play that horn a little bit, but can you read or write? And Shashi was on me about reading and writing. And I developed an incredible program there. And when it was right that they changed the curriculum, they tried to retrench they retrenched the African-American music program. It was one of the first music programs that was dealing with the music of Duke Ellington, Charles Mingus, Mary Lou Williams, Sarah Vaughan, all that. That was the main course. Through that lens, you study through music. You could study anything through those people's, the Charlie Parker, you can, as opposed to going and study Mozart and Beethoven, and then you start look at other things. You look through that view, like people like William Grant Still. You look through an African lens. That was the important part about Westbury. I'm passionate about that. And I got it together. And Shashi McIntyre was something else, man.
She was a wonderful woman.
How you know her? How you know her?
We used to be on a lot of different things in terms of education and advocacy. Right there in Harlem, Shashi was part of a group that we met at the Clark House every Saturday, right there on Convent Avenue.
Right on the corner of the church.
Yes, yes. So I knew her from there, but we did other things together. I was privileged to have been invited to her homes many times. That was great. You just drew up a name that I have long ago forgot after she died, and that just jarred me because remembering her. Oh, you're evoking so many memories. Butts became president of Old Westbury. Calvin Butts.
He just retired, but he was there for the last maybe 15, 20 years.
Yes, I remember when he was appointed to be the president of the university. Now, you go to college, you learn, you apply yourself, and you come out on the other end. I always ask people, what was your first job after you got out of high school, out of college?
Okay, this is it. See, this is the beautiful thing about Westbury. Ken changed his name to Maconda Ken McIntyre. So we call him. So Maconda, he would hire us. The thing about Westbury, they would hire practitioners, not people who just taught, but people who, whatever they were teaching, they did it for a living. So he hired a lot of great musicians to come in and teach with him. And he hired this guy named Lordine Pat Patrick. Lordine Pat Patrick is Duval Patrick's father, the
governor of Massachusetts.
Right, yeah. But also Pat Patrick is the first member of a man named Sun Ra. For people who don't know, there's a man named Sun Ra. And Pat Patrick was one of the first members of Sun Ra's original bands in Chicago. Okay. And so my last semester at school, Pat taught a history course. And he said, he was looking at me, he said, yo, Craig, what you gonna do? I remember I just graduated. And he said, I was sitting in front of the student union and he came, he said, yo, man, what you doing? I said, man, I don't know. He said, what you gonna do now? You matriculated, and he was joking and stuff. He said, well, listen here, come down to this club called The Bottom Line on Mercer Street.
Oh, the Bottom Line.
He said, come down to the bottom line. He said, come down to the bottom line. I said, okay. He said, and come in and sit in with the band, Sun Ra. So people don't know people. I'll talk more about Sun Ra. So he said, come in and sit in with the band. So I came in and then I said, oh man, I was like really hyped because I really was there. That's a big gig. Sun Ra is big in our world because he's an innovator and stuff like that. So he's asking me to come sit in with the band. And there was a place in Brooklyn called the East on 10 Claver Place by G2 Wayusi and the Uhuru Sasa crew. But Bashir.
Another name, G2. I knew G2.
I used to go to the East all the time and hear Sun Ra when he would play it. The East was one of these places we were in our nationalism. No Europeans were allowed in the East. It was a place for culturally where we just did what we did. And it was funny. And every weekend, like from Westbury, we get in that car and we go hear the music at the East, Friday and Saturday nights. And that's a funny thing. I'm gonna tell you how much the passion for the music is. We have, man, one night, McCoy Tyner, the great piano player, he was playing at the East. And so Azande, a friend of mine, and he had something happened to his car. So we couldn't get to Brooklyn. And then we had to get on the train or something. We said, man, we ain't gonna make it. So we was in the practice rooms and like, how are we gonna get there? And then we heard this alto saxophone playing. And it was a guy named Lee Greenblatt, a Jewish cat that went to school with us, but he had a green Rambler. So we looked at each other and we got to say, we're going to take Lee in there. But I said, man, we can't take Lee into the East. He's white. We said, he's going to be Puerto Rican tonight. And we slicked his hair up and gave him a green beret and we put a green beret on him and some dark glasses. And we said, listen, tonight your name is Jorge and you don't speak English. And if anybody come up to you, don't you say shit. Just say your name is Jorge. And so we got to the door. And I talked to Mr. Wale about this all the time, one of the founders at East. And I told him about this. And so we came in there, and they had the brothers in the East. We said, oh, man, yeah, these cats might tighten us up if we did. So Lee was quiet. So we went in there, and Lee didn't say nothing. But Lee's one of them inquisitive because he's a fine musician, and he wants to know things. So he's looking around. I said, man, don't say nothing. Just be cool and say you Jorge, okay? All right. So we went in there, we sat down and said, then I saw Lee getting that look like he was getting ready to go. I said, man, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't. And so I got him, he didn't talk to it. But that's how we wanted to hear that music so much. We appropriated, we took him and we turned him into Puerto Rican one night. So we were serious about that music. And it's a funny thing about life. I think he gained a lot about most of the European Americans, and I use these terms, European American and African American, as from Dr. Clark. That's where, that's because I was educated up at I was at every lecture up at the Hill, on the church on the Hill. So that's why for people who don't understand when I say African American or European American, that's the genesis of that. If you want to be Black, if you want to be colored, be whoever you want to be, but those are just some terms I use, I like to use. And so getting back to that, and that's just, so I would go see Sun Ra play, and I would see all of it, so I kind of knew what to do. So when I got on the band, Sun Ra said, get on the bandstand. I played the set, and then I got off, and I said, okay. And then he said, Harris, he said, Craig, you got a passport? I said, no, I don't have no passport, Sun Ra. He said, get a passport. I said, why? He said, we're going to Paris next week. So like I graduate June 4th, and then July 14th, 1976, I'm on the Champs-Élysées. So that was beautiful with 23 musicians. Sun Ra took the band, he took 23 musicians, and we moved to Paris. We stayed in the Hotel S, Gare de l'Est. We stayed there, that's where we stayed. That was our headquarters. And it was like, and it was so funny, man, Stephen, because we couldn't, I speak a little French now, but back then we was really like, woo, we butchered that language. And we butchered the language, and Stephen, so we'd go over there, and there's a stop. We wanted to go where we wanted the African food and go where the African people was. So they say it's Barbès Rochechouart, Barbès Rochechouart. They say Barbès Rochechouart, Barbès Rochechouart. And okay, then we say Champs-Élysées. So we was like, man, we can't say that. So listen, instead of saying Champs-Élysées, I'll meet you at Champ Elijah. So meet at Champ Elijah. And then we said, if you want to go meet me on the train at Barbès Rochechouart, we just say, meet me at Baby Roaches. So Baby Roaches. So the French people saying, where you going? We're going to Baby Roaches. And so that was my first gig. And it was for like, we were supposed to go there for a week, and we stayed there for 3 months. And it was just an incredible time of my life.
That must have been some really heady stuff to come out of school, and the next week you were in Paris.
That was, and that was the beauty of it, but I was young. I was like 21 years old, man. So it was like, it's so funny. I met Baldwin, and there's a famous restaurant by an American patriot named Haynes Restaurant. It's historic, Haynes Restaurant. He had a restaurant, a soul food restaurant in Paris, long before my time. And so I remember, and I said, okay, man, I really want some grits and some eggs. They said, you got to go to Haynes. So I got on the train, I found his restaurant. So I went in there, and it was lunchtime and stuff. And I went in there, it was a little dark-skinned guy sitting in the corner and stuff. And I'm telling you, I'm just 2 weeks out of school, and I'm looking at this guy. I said, I know who this guy, I'm looking at this guy. And then he comes out of the dark a little bit. It's James Baldwin. It's James Baldwin.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great story.
Sitting down there, and I say, hey, brother, how you doing? I really enjoy your work. And he said, oh, sit down. We talked for a minute. And then he said, so what you gonna have? I said, I'm gonna have some. He said, and they brought me asparagus soup. I was like, asparagus soup? I didn't come here for no asparagus soup. But that was it. So I ate the soup, and I just talked to Mr. Baldwin for a minute, then I left. And that was it. And there was like, well, man, there was a lot of expatriates there, a lot of people, people. I keep seeing his name.
Did you get to meet Josephine Baker?
I didn't get to meet her. Ted Jones, he told me a lot about it. I didn't get to her place. I didn't get to her place, but there was Sunrise, back then things were looser. So you could, like, once you get a big festival, Stephen, like you hire, like Montreux hires you, or North Sea Festival, they pay you well, and you can bring your whole band, but you got to fill up the filler dates in between. So Sunrise got the plane tickets, and we roomed 4 in a room, and we just stayed at the Hotel S when we weren't working. So we go out, do a big festival, like we'd take the bus and go to Berlin, then we come back. So Paris was our base. Everybody knew it was in Paris. And once all the promoters found out that we were there, then that made they could do it. They could make it happen because they didn't have to pay no airfare. You know, and Sunrise knew this. They call it barnstorming, and his manager named Richard Wilkinson, who lived in the St. Nicholas Projects on 130th Street. Richard and Sunrise, they would get on the phone every day and just call people like, we're here, like we got 23 people in the bus, we're looking for work. And it was really, I got great lessons. I saw, of course, Eiffel Tower, all the things I had been reading about. Every night I walked down, we walked to the Seine, we walk all the way down. What's that, Boulevard Sebastin? Every night we just walk and it's a beautiful time.
On the very first gig that you did with Sun Ra, you got the audience in front of you, and this is your first gig. How did you feel and what happened?
Woo! It was at the Olympia, the great Olympia Theater, Theatre Olympia, which is the historic, we played at the Olympia in Paris. And first of all, the place was packed, 2,000 people. Okay, that's the first thing coming out of American. Okay, I'm coming out. And I had read about how the Europeans really supported our music and stuff like that. But we go there and I'm like, there's 2,000 people out there in the audience. And I had never played in front of that many people before. And I had rehearsed. The first gig we did with Sun Ra, my first gig we had played at the East on Claver Place outside. And then we took a week off and played in Philly. Then we got on the plane and we played at the Olympia Theater. It was like, I was like, wow. If you know me, I always, people sick of me, but I always try to keep a level about everything. I have great emotions, but I always try to be a level kind of person. I was like, this is it. This is really, instead of being excited, I said, this is very interesting. This is very interesting. And so we hit, and Sun Ra hit hard. He hit up, and he played like 2.5 hours. We played, and the people like went crazy. And it was just like, it was affirmation of how important our culture is. That's what I sensed. And people would come up and talk, and they knew something about me. And that was and I'm a rookie, I'm straight up. And the guy said, oh yeah, you Craig Harris, you from Long Island. And
did you think the FBI was following you or the CIA?
FBI, I said, this guy's FBI. But no, it's but at that time, it's not like that always, Stephen, but at that time, because they've gotten Americanized and followed this old ignorance over here. But at that time, people did their research. They really they know everything about this. They want to know everything. They do their research.
At that time, was Sun Ra, because I saw Sun Ra, which you might have been on the stage at the time. I saw him play not at the Village, it was on 7th Avenue, Sweet Basil.
Sweet Basil, okay, that was after me.
Yeah, well, at that time, the band would go out the front door, around the side, and then come in.
Back door, right. Yeah.
Was he doing that when you were with him?
Oh, that's always part of his thing, the procession, always. So we marched through the streets. One night we marched through the streets of Milan, the whole band just marching through the streets of Milan. And like we walked out and the audience coming out and following us, then we go back in because the police, y'all can't be doing that. And that's the tradition. That's the line. The line, some people in New Orleans call it second line, but it's just the line, the procession. We just making a merrier sound. Yeah, I worked with him from 76 to 79, 80. And you're right. It affirmed all of my years of study that we're great people and we're from a great culture and we have something very special. Mm-hmm. And we never lose. And with all our common, what they call it, we Afrocentric now, but we just like Afrocentric. I think that's the new term now. And there's this whole movement with Sun Ra about Afrofuturism now. Like he's the godfather of this Afrofuturism movement.
What planet was he from?
Saturn. Discipline. Saturn is a great taskmaster. Come on, take a journey to Saturn.
Okay, now you get through Sun Ra, you leave Sun Ra, and where do you go?
Okay, so that was the thing. I was working with Sun Ra, but I was still. In fact, I had been home. So I left that July, and I came back. I went back to my mother's apartment that October, and said, okay. And it's still at Long Island. It's very utilitarian. You need a real job. So I said, that music, you need a job.
Post office.
Exactly. So I went down to the EOOC to get a job, the EOC Economic Opportunity Center, to get a job in here. I said, okay. And they said, what do you do? I said, I'm a musician. I'm a composer. They said, okay. I said, I know jobs for musicians. They said, what else can you do? I said, I know. I can. Did you read this? I said, I read this, write this. I said, okay. They said, okay, you're somewhat competent. That's Shashi and Anita Hicks got my skills together. Listen, you're going to work for a Department of Social Services in Long Island. So they sent me to the Department of Social Services. And I go in there and the woman, she says, what do you do? I said, I'm a musician. She said, what can you do here? I said, they sent me here. So she said, all right, just go sit in the corner and just sit down, because she had to hire me. So she just see me sitting in the corner. She was I forgot her name. And she said, this guy, he just sits here. We don't know what to do with him. And then she said, you a musician? I said, yeah. She said, listen, I want you to go to the Lakeview Senior Center and I want you to play for the seniors. So I went and played my horn. I played Let Me Call You Sweetheart, all them old songs and stuff like that. And so she got a part. She said, oh, that was good. That was good. She said, that's your job. You go to all the senior centers in Nassau County and you play music, just entertain the seniors. So that was my job for a minute. And okay, my mother and everybody said, oh, you got a real job. And then I was doing gigs with Sun Ra and them at the same time. And then we played Saturday Night Live in 77.
I remember that. That you were on that broadcast. Okay.
I'm on that broadcast. We played with Buck Henry. Buck Henry. So we played and we stayed at the Essex Hotel. They had a room for me at the Essex Hotel. I said, man, I'm not going back to that. I'm not going back to the center. And I had a good time. Hey, Stephen, I had recruited a band. There was an old Italian guy who played the saxophone, and then there was an old woman who played piano. So we got a little band, and we went to all the centers and playing, and that would have been it. But I said, this is not what I'm supposed to do in life. So I didn't go back. And you know what? I was immature. I should have just went back and gave my notice to them. I just didn't go back. Those are some of the things you regret in life, because she worked with me. She said, I got something for you to do. I worked with Sun Ra, and then I moved into the city. I moved to 21st Street. One of my teachers, Warren Smith, had a loft on 21st Street called Studio Wisp between 6th Avenue and 7th, 151 West 21st Street. And I lived there, and Studio Wisp was in this middle of the loft period. They called it loft jazz, where a lot of the musicians downtown, they weren't playing in the clubs and stuff. We were playing in the lofts in the Lower East Side. Like Sam Rivers, the great, he had Studio Rigby. Then they had Environ. Joe Lee Wilson had a place. A lot of music. And this was, remember that Do for Self, have our own institutions and ladies fort. So there was a whole scene going on the East Side. Every night we'd be out, walk straight down 7th Avenue, make that left on A Street, walk all the way to Avenue A and just hang all ladies fort. What was Miguel Algarin, the poet, his New Eurekan Cafe. This was a scene. That was a real scene. It was an alternative scene to the West Side. And after a while, all the Europeans were starting coming. They started coming over to the East Side. And it made sense because Amiri Baraka told me, he said, well, this is where we were in the 60s. So they just coming back here again in the 70s and stuff, because this is where we at. And so we would create our own concerts. We would give our own concerts. We just kept working. And I lived at the studio, and there was nothing but musicians in the studio. Warren Smith is one of the great people in my life. He gave me the key. He said, don't mess up. Take the key, keep the place clean, and you can do this. He ain't charged me no rent or nothing. He said, you can do this. But he didn't just do that to me. He'd do that about 10, 12 people, anybody. So I come in there some night, my little space, I said, who's sleeping in my space? It was like just musicians. Warren was like that. He just would get, yeah, if you don't, your thing was don't F up with no stuff like that. Max Roach, Warren's part of this group with Max Roach called Boom, with the percussionist. So it was just this enclave of musicians. David Murray, a lot of people started coming from Chicago. And we created this, we was part of this great world. And that's how I know we get together, and if we get $10 together, we can get a big old plate of Chinese food and 3 of us can eat. Stephen, when you could get like $7, $8 and you can really eat. They gave you, maybe 2 of us could eat, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I was working there, and this is my thing with Harlem. I was back in Harlem again because Sun Ra's manager lived in Harlem. So anytime I wanted to get paid, I had to go up to St. Nicholas Projects to Richard's house to get paid. So I started hanging in Harlem then. Like that, just hanging in there. I see my aunt every once in a while, but I was hanging in Harlem a lot, just going there. So between Harlem and the Lower East Side, just going back and forth. And started working with people. Then I worked with this musician. Who did I work with? Abdullah Ibrahim, South African musician. South Africa, Dollar Brand, they call him Dollar Brand. And we would travel Europe and go to Europe. And this guy, I learned a lot from Abdullah Ibrahim because he created a whole nother world. He dealt with a lot of the people in exile, the South Africans in exile. So when we went to Africa, you go to these other places, Abdullah had a whole nother circuit where he was dealing with a lot of the people from exile. So I got a really
Masekela?
Yeah, Basakila, Basil Coetzee, even, and I didn't even know Walter, what's his name? Walter Tambo. I'm talking about what was his name? He was Mandela's boy. He's Mandela's friend. Tambo, what was his name?
Yes, Walter Tombo.
Yeah, we would be at things like, because they were all up in Sweden. They were out of the country. They were all up in there. So I got a chance to see a lot of that world. I got, once again, that education thing. And so I just was working as a musician, getting my name around and stuff, like just moving around, just getting things together. Like we do, we network, we take care of each other. And in the studio, we had a payphone for young people. We had payphones before the cell phones. We had a phone and they had a clipboard near the phone where you just write your message. Somebody call you, like Craig, Henry Threadgill need a trombone player tonight, or Kenyatte. So we had our own little like service there, and everybody would come up there and rehearse. So one day I got a call from a great man named Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, who was one of our finest composers. He's no longer with us. He did sound. He did the music for sound. He was a great composer. Leonard Bernstein told the world in the 60s that this was the future of music. Coleridge Perkinson was the future of music. Mm-hmm. And Perk, we call him Perk. Perk said, okay. So one day I got a message from Perk. He said, come up to 42nd Street Carroll Studio. I got a job for you. And I walked in there and Perk had just arranged the whole thing for Lena Horne's Broadway show.
Oh, so wow.
He said, sit down. And I sat down and I got the gig. He called me because of him and Warren's recommendation. And it was a great band. And Miss Horne came in. And I was like, whoa. And we did the music with Miss Horne. For 2 years, we worked Broadway every night. And I learned a lot about greatness with watching Miss Horne. Like people use this word, you heard this word, everybody's a diva now, a diva. I learned what greatness is. Miss Horne, her thing was, she put that whole show on her back. And she might have took maybe 3 weeks off out the whole 2 years, maybe 4 weeks. And the thing was, it's a one-woman show. So if she didn't perform, there was no show. Everybody was off. And so she said, baby, I can't miss no shows because if I don't play, y'all don't play until y'all don't get no pay. So she had that kind of commitment to her own work, but to take care of all those people. She had 40 people on her back every night, just bringing it down. And just really just no pretense, like, how you doing, Craig? We were upstage too, and it was beautiful. It was an African-American band. And this, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go back to, this is one of those rare things where there's a predominantly African-American band on Broadway stage every night for 2 years. That's history.
You know why she was like that? Where she was from, the center of the universe. I live about 10 blocks from where she was born at.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, in Brooklyn.
And Grady Tate, Bob Crenshaw, great people in this band. And I'm just Jack Jeffers, who was a great trombone player, bass trombone player. He mentored me through that, got me through it, because that's a different kind of work than playing in small groups. You have to come in, you have to really be concise, learn how to mark the book. There's a whole protocol. And this guy named Jack Jeffers, who's still with us, he's 93 years old now. He had been doing, he was one of the first, Warren Smith and Jack Jeffers, some of the first African-Americans to break the color line in the studios in New York City, because they started needing some other rhythms. They started needing some color up in that studio. And so they were probably the first crew. In fact, they blackballed Jack Jeffers and Perk because they would bring in predominantly, they tried to hire African-Americans, put them to work. And the thing about Jack Jeffers, Stephen, check this out. This cat, we on the stage every night, and I'm the horn. I'm struggling trying to get my parts together and making sure everything. He's studying his law. He's getting his law degree, and he got his law book, studying his law because he's such a veteran. I said, man, how you do this? He said, Craig, I know this by he's just an incredible cat, and he got his law degree and passed the bar.
I remember when Grady Tate. I knew Grady Tate.
Ooh.
When he used to work at. He used to drum at Possible 20.
That's his hole. That was his hole. That's what they did. He was some kind of person and just gracious. And this is something, Stephen, that we don't get enough of now. Elders and young people working together and us learning from them, because everything now is, academia has taken over a lot of the culture. And so a lot of people go to schools, they learn this, they learn this, they learn this, they learn this, but they don't learn like that on-the-job training, being with somebody who's been doing it for 20 years and you just get under their wing and they don't preach to you. You just watch, just be quiet and watch and take heed.
I was reading an article not too long ago, last week, as a matter of fact, that was saying that the students that take music generally are the better students. It's something about learning music helps the brain to be able to absorb other information.
Yeah, it's math. It's the highest forms of math is in music. Highest forms of sociology is in music, getting along, working together. So it's there. So I was glad when they had that STEM program, STEAM. Now they call it STEAM, because they put arts in there too: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So because music is, especially when you study composition and you study things like that, you really will understanding of the validity of the arts in our culture. And we in the same tribe, we around that same time. It was a mistake when they got that music out of them schools.
I was just going to say that, because when you said earlier about your picking a trombone, now I did not follow a music path, but in the 5th grade, like you had to choose a musical instrument. Mine was the flute.
Right, there you go.
I didn't follow up on the music side, although I did try to play the guitar, because at that time, playing the guitar and being in a band is what got you girls.
All right. That's how we all start. Go on.
Now, as you moved into the 90s, how did your life transition?
Once it's a networking thing, and it's about your name starts to circulate. And so I say 80s, I was recording young, and I was becoming the young lions, one of these young lions, this young person up in the music. And you're following that path. But around this was it. I was saying 1988, I was traveling Europe. We used to travel like 6-7 weeks tours. And it was like, and I didn't know grinding. Like we like, even if doing at a high level, catching 3 planes in one day is no fun. Catching 2 trains a day, that's no fun. It's like work, especially when you come in on Gleis, like track 10, and then you got to get off your track, and then you got 5 minutes, you got to get to Gleis 1 in 2 minutes. So you running through with the bags and stuff like this. See, I did that grind, that road grind. And I started, and I was always a composer. I always been composing, and I just started seeing that we're always in Europe, and we'd be or in Japan, and we weren't working enough at home in New York or in the States. And so I just started to do some research, and I started seeing that the music scene had really changed at home. Like the amount of clubs and the amount of people that go hear music is very small group, especially very small group of African Americans coming to hear the music now, and it just really changed. And I'm saying, well, what's going on here? I started to go. Amiri Baraka was a great mentor of mine. He wrote the liner notes for my first recording, Aboriginal Affairs on Indian Navigation. And Amiri, and I would watch Amiri, the poet. I watched what the poets were doing. I'd watch with the theater people. I watched what the dancers were doing. There's a woman named Diane McIntyre. She had a studio on 290 Lenox Avenue in that corner building. She had a dance studio upstairs, and they would have in Boza Rivers and them, they had the Heritage. What's his name? Man, I forget this guy's name. Ooh, it'll come back to me. He had a theater company. He had a
Woody
theater
King?
company. No, Woody King was up further, but Woody King's up further. Roger, his name was Roger something. But so I started working more with dance companies, writing music for dance companies, and then writing music. I hooked up with a great poet named Sekou Sundiata. And we were like best friends, and we started working together. And I noticed that we were developing another audience, not just the music audience, we were getting the cultural audience that wanted to come and say sort of thing. So I did a lot of that. We did a 3-man show with a woman named Stephanie Alston and Sekou called The Circle Unbroken is a Hard Bop, directed by this guy named Rome Neal, and we would travel the country. And so it's really branching out into other genres, a lot in the 90s. A lot of that in the 90s. Recording, writing, really concentrating on my writing and just branching out. They call it, performance art. I got into performance art. That became a lot of big things. People coming, working down at the La Mama's Theater down in East Side. I wish I could, it'd come to me, Roger. He was a great director, and he had this theater on 290 Lenox Avenue. And so I just started doing that more. And then I got together with some friends of mine uptown, and we started giving concerts. we felt we could give concerts like the Lofts thing. We like there was, remember on 145th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, there was a drugstore, Rexall or something, right on the corner of,
Yes.
yeah. And
There's a bar on one corner, and you had to go down a couple of steps to go into the bar. Yeah.
But then on the 5th floor there, my friend had a studio. His name was Glenn Sappel, Shadow Image Studio. And we started having concerts there because I felt I lived in Harlem, and I lived in Harlem. I ate in Harlem, but I'm working so much downtown. I wasn't working in Harlem enough. And the music that I was playing at the time didn't fit so much the regular, like going into the club, you're going to pop your fingers and have a good time and sing. I grew up doing that. I've done that all my life, but we were going in some other sonic territory. So we needed, where we could stretch out more. So we started doing community concerts in those kind of places. And I said, this is what's important to me, because it's nothing like going to playing in your neighborhood, playing where you live.
Lennox
Lounge, right? All of those places like that, all that. And then we created an alternative. Like we had the Shadow Image for people like, if you want to hear that kind, we did all flavors. Like I like all my music on the same plate, to quote Oliver Lake, all the things like that. And all that, and really develop it. It goes back to what Adam Clayton Powell did in '64 when he brought, Adam Clayton Powell raised like $10 million for arts that summer because they thought African Americans were going to burn summer down. So they had that summer, there was nothing but culture all throughout, plays and music every night. And so that's my mission, to really to get that going again, get those things going where we really become this cultural mecca we are, because everybody knows it but us. People come from all around, they value us so much. And a lot of our people, we don't know this. They come here on a mission. When they come and see these brownstones, they come in, it's not just money, when they come in to see some architecture, they come in to see some architecture that is never done. It's not gonna be done again. Mm-hmm. As you've been in it. That's how I met Blood and Carlton and them in these things.
To Walter, when I finish this broadcast.
It's so funny because when Carlton and they developed what's the name of that? The Serengeti? No, yeah, the Mist.
Kalahari.
I went in there, Carlton took me in there when it was nothing but cinder block. He said, Craig, we can create something here. You down? I didn't have the money to get in down with them like I wanted to, but he said the future can be incredible here. And I was in the formative years. They gave me a room on him, and I forgot the woman who was running it. She was running it. We played there every Thursday night, and in his formative thing.
Oh, that's right, Kiera.
That's it. That's the name.
Yes, Kiera Wesley.
Right, yeah, we played that. So he would know me that way. That's the way he would know me. Because I knew him from Blood, because they was talking about Mr. Edwards, and I said, Mr. Edwards. And when I saw him, I said, that's Blood. Because if you mention Harvey's barbershop, he know Harvey. Harvey died. Harvey was like a fixture in the thing. So he knows me from Harvey. And then he said, oh, we got it. That's been the mission. About 10 years ago, we formed an organization called, we had 3 on 3 with my neighbor. Her name is Patricia Eaton. And she's a great vocalist herself. Her daughter's a great vocalist. And we started that about 13 years ago just to have concerts at Mount Morris Ascension Church. Okay. Did that for 10 years. Then I moved on, and I've started working with another woman named Carolyn Johnson, who has an organization called Welcome to Harlem. But we have music every Friday night. We've been doing this for 8 years. We started at Rendell Church on 137th by Harlem Hospital. Then we moved down to Calvary, which is on 124th, north side of Marcus Garvey. And we worked in Mount Morris Ascension. And the whole thing was, we see all these churches, but the congregations are small. So I would go to the pastors and say, listen, we'll rent a place for you Friday or Sunday afternoon when it's not busy, and have music, because I think that's the future. I think those kind of spaces. And especially when the COVID came down, we could still, like a place like Mount Olive holds 3,000 people in there. So we can get 400 or 500 people there and socially distant. I'm a musician first and foremost, but I have that social, then that comes from Shashi McIntyre. I travel and I develop home. I backdoor people say, where did it happen to you? I said, nothing happened to me. I'm home growing. And that's good, like supporting Jazz Mobile, and just been very, very busy, still doing that, working on all kinds of pieces.
What's your next date that people should come out to? And also give me a website address that people can contact you at.
But first, finishing this community thing, you live near Sister's Place, those kind of places. Sister's Place, right on that corner. Sister's, what is it?
I've been to Sister's Place with Carlton on a New Year's Eve. Right. Carlton and Ulysses Kilgore.
Well, you saw me play there, and that was me.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That's where it is. Okay.
Because I played for 10 years. I played there for every New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Every New Year's Eve. And Kilgore, see, that's my heart. You know, there's Kilgore and Fred.
Fred from Staten Island, who died not too long ago.
Henderson. Dr. Henderson.
Andrew Henderson.
So I believe in us building our community and keeping our culture strong in our community. And so I've been really fortunate. And so we stopped and I got the call to do the music, to write the music for this film called Judas and the Black Messiah.
Oh, okay.
So I wrote the film score for that.
And that's Judy Shepard's son.
Who they called me to do that. I'm married to Judy Shepard's sister. So Shaka King is my nephew.
Shaka King is your nephew. Okay. See, now we put all this together. This is where we met at. We probably met at Carlton's house, one of his.
Right. So Shaka called me and said, Craig, I want you to do the music for the film. I said, you sure about that? Because I'm not in California. I'm not a screenwriter, but he knows I write. He's seen me all his life. He said, you're going to write the music for this film. And so he went and he said, this is the guy that's going to write the music for the film. They said, what? He said, and this is what it's going to be. And we got that film done. But the thing was, Stephen, we had to do it all virtual. Like the co-composer, Mark Isham, fine composer is right. He was in Los Angeles. Then the music editor, Marvin Morris, was in Denver. So we had to do everything virtual because we couldn't see. We had planned to just go into the studio, do it old school. Miles did that movie, The Gallows, where he watched it and played to it, but we couldn't do it that way. So we did it this way. And we worked from March all the way until we couldn't get in the room with people until August. We got in, and then we rented Manhattan Center and we did the whole with the full orchestra.
I remember they were doing it. Yes. Oh, whoa.
I'm still trying to find out where your people from in South Carolina.
Oh, they're from Vance, South Carolina. They're from there. I had some people that I know that's probably around the Aiken area, but they were more on the central side near Orangeburg, South Carolina. I have lots and lots of relatives in Bowman, South Carolina.
Yeah, man, I want to commend you for what you're doing because you're documenting our story. I know you. I know who I'm talking to now. I knew early in the conversation. The current activity. So when Judas went, we got nominated for a couple of Oscars, and we just were not. We were nominated by the NAACP for the Image Award for the sound score for it. We didn't win. Jay-Z won with The Harder They Come Fall, whatever they won, but that's okay. But I'm in the conversation now. But it's about, we continue on our Friday. Next time I'm playing live is going to be, March 30th at Aaron Davis Hall. We're going to work on this Afrofuturism thing, the influence of Sun Ra. And I'm going to have a group, a quintet, featuring a great saxophonist named David Murray and a string quartet. So that's going to be at Aaron Davis Hall on March 30th.
Well, I know how I can get tickets, and so that I can come.
Facebook, Instagram, all of that. You can reach me, Craig Harris. My website, Craig S. Harris.
I really appreciate you being on the broadcast today. It was just a wonderful experience. And even though when we started, I said, I don't know him. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to ask him and say. But then the vibe took over and we understood each other. And that just was so wonderful. And I thank you so much for being on my show. So let me tell my audience, you need to go out on March 30th to his performance at Aaron Davis Hall and look for his Facebook page. What is your Facebook page so that people can look?
Craig Harris.
Okay. Do you have an email address or a?
Craig S. Harris at AOL.com.
I'll put it on the screen for you. That's it for the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Thank you for joining us, and we'll have another wonderful topic next week.
Take care, Stephen.
Thank you for tuning in this week. Hope you enjoyed this show about stuff. See you next time.